Hey, Composing Gloves here. I'm wearing a hat, and today we are going to be going over the master area. So these controls here, the master filter, the master effects, these send effects, which are the same thing pretty much, and tuning area of the sample control. So we are not going to be dealing with the modulation tab, so I'll close that. So to open these up, if they're not already open, you click these triangles right here. And underneath the sample control, I didn't cover these controls in the sample video. In retrospect, I probably should have. But we have here coarse, fine, pan, and gain. Coarse allows you to change the tuning in semitones. So you see this particular sample in this patch, which sounds like that, by the way. It's the Monk's Temple patch. It has been tuned down an octave, 12 tones. So that's what that does. Fine allows you to tune it in cents. So 100 cents is equivalent to 1 semitone. So if you are very particular about the pitch of whatever it is you're dealing with, you can adjust that using the fine knob. The coarse knob may not be exact enough for you. And then we have pan, which allows you to pan this particular sample. If we were to solo this, it sounds like that. If we were to pan it, you see we could pan this individual sample left or right. You can double click to reset it. And we can also set the gain, meaning the amplitude of that effect. Now, moving on. So that's pretty straightforward stuff. Now, if we come over here, we have some interesting options with the send and master effects. Not really interesting, but sort of limiting. It's a curious thing. You see here that we have the inability to activate these right now. They are off. But if we switch it over here to our master effects, you notice this is underneath the master tab. So you have to have that open to be able to do this. You hit send. Whoa, send effects on. But guess what? Your master effects are no good now. You see now there's no effect happening. If I switch back to the master, our effects are back on. So you have to pick one or the other. It's an interesting deal. I usually settle on send. If you see me using master, it just happened because it depends on what I'm trying to accomplish. So let's talk about the differences, and then you'll see why a little bit more clearly. So send effects are the same as master effects. They're all the same. So all the same effects, except for you can mix your different samples in individually. So you see here we have 3 samples going. Well, I could have more distortion on this one and less on this one, and maybe a ton on that one, and some reverb on this one, but not on this one or that one, and some chorus on this one. You see, we can get like, oh, really particular about the way things go. So this offers more control. So I'm more prone to do it that way. But if you want the same stuff on all of them, obviously master's a lot easier to go. So creatively speaking, maybe you want to go the master route because it'd be a little more musical, a little easier to think about what it is you're trying to accomplish as a sound. But maybe in that process, you find out you need to be a little more exact. So you go into send. And then what I like to do is I'll go into send and then I'll push it into post. So I'll do whatever I want to do with in send effects. And then in post, I'll go and add all my effects that I want to do to the whole thing. Because at that point, it's in post. So I'll come into my mixer and add stuff. And so that's sort of my philosophy about using this right now. It's interesting that you can't use both. That's always curious to me, is maybe one day we'll be enabled to do that. But it's just the trade-off of this particular synth. Every synth has that. So we come in here and let's look at the different algorithms. And it's kind of nice to have it separate. Let's go to sample 1. And a quick note, if you change the algorithm on one, you will change them on the other. So if I let's change this to scream, and let's go to 2 and say, I don't want scream. I want, asymmetrical. And then we come over here and we're like, oh, it changed. So whatever you do in here is applied across all of them. They are send effects. So you have one instance of the effect and you're sending the sample to it and mixing in the effect as you want. These effects aren't the most specific effects. So you can't, as you see here, we have distortion. We have 2 knobs. That's it. It's not that complicated. But if you want to be more specific, again, you're going to want to run it into post. So these are they're really, really nice though, and very musical because, you pick your algorithm, whatever you want, and they're nice. They're high quality algorithms, and you turn them up to the amount that you want and you call it good. So it's really sort of a just use your ear and just feel it out type deal, which is very musical in my opinion. So it's the same way. It's the same reason fixed EQs are so cool. It's like, there's not a lot of hard thinking. You find a setting that sounds good and move on with your life instead of getting into all the details. So we have tube. And let me see here. You have to turn up. So these are the parameters, but you still have to turn up the master distortion knob to hear it. So You can hear it beginning to do it, and you can actually see it in our little spectrogram view. Change the tone and whatnot. And these little knobs here are for modulation. You'll notice them all over the place at this point. And so we'll get into the modulation in a separate video. One of my favorites, I really like their aliasing one. And what you can do is you can move it around and get that real. You can get those old school, like, wow, wow, yeah, 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 those sorts of things from this. It's pretty cool algorithm. One of the ones I really like. And then the other one that sort of gets me is the asymmetrical. If you go in here. Right. Okay. So every asymmetrical distortion, because of the nature of it, should cause a click when you move your playlist around, but no click. So I don't know what this is, but to me, it's not asymmetrical distortion if it doesn't make crap click when you move your playlist head around. So, yeah, so that's just an interesting side note. So that's the amount in tune, because asymmetrical would like have a weird thing at the zero crossing. So every time you move, something happens with your audio engine, causes a click. So it's an interesting deal. Okay, so that's distortion. Chorus, I'm going to assume that you generally know what effects are. So if you don't know what effects are, I have videos on distortion in the FL12 effects series. I recommend you look up maybe the Wave Shaper video. They're closely related to compressors a lot of the time, but sometimes there's other methods of doing things that aren't quite the same. And also in the mixing series, especially for things like chorus that are delay effects and stuff. But these are also covered in the FL12 effects. And I also have a video specifically on chorusing and flanging, or flanging, however you want to say it, in the sound and synth basics, which I mentioned in the first video anyway. So yeah, and here there's nothing really like of note. It's pretty standard chorus stuff. Same for the delay. So if you turn on the delay, same deal. And then we also have the reverb, same, nothing too crazy in here, standard reverb stuff. So that's cool. Now, if we go back to our master, it's the same deal, only now it's being applied to all the samples through one chain. So that's that. Up next, we have our filter. Our filters are really cool, but they're standard filters. Nothing crazy about these either. We have a cutoff. We have resonance. They're able to select different ones. They each have their own pass. They might induce different phase shifts. See your signal slightly differently, different poles, filters. So I'll just let you go in there and play with those. They're really high quality. Some of them, there's a couple. I believe the New York low pass is one of the more intense ones. Some of these are more intense processing wise than others, and they each have their own fill. So for example, if we were to let's get rid of these clear mod assignment by right clicking, going to clear mod. And so here's our New York low pass, and here's Tokyo. So you see it's different pole filter, and it just responds differently. The resonance also be a big deal, how they implement the resonance in the different filters. Now we're in a high pass, so that's like an entirely different brand of filter. So, but anyways, you get the idea. Now we have this tracking knob here. So that's just key tracking. They didn't want to write key tracking. They just wrote tracking. And so if you're not familiar with key tracking will move your cutoff for you, because higher notes will be filtered way more than lower notes because they're higher up. So if your low pass is only passing low frequencies, you're playing low notes, and all of a sudden you play a higher note. That higher note's not going to get heard. It's going to shave material off as you get closer and closer to the cutoff value and eventually exceed it. So what you do is you apply key tracking, and it will actually move the cutoff knob as you play, allowing you to have those higher notes be heard. So if we play like a low note, and play a high note, that's what we have. But if we set our key tracking to 0, which is confusing because there's a -%, which like does the inverse, which could be useful depending on the type of filter you're using. But if we play a low note now, play a high note, you see you can't hear nothing. But if we go back to our key tracking, and if we add even more, they're like, whoa, now we're really moving the cutoff knob. So that's what the key tracking is for. And it's a very, very important. In some sense, it's actually an integral part. Well, I guess in all sense, it's an integral part of how the synth sounds, because it might actually generate multiple key tracking elements based on various things. Like Monarch will generate multiple key tracks for each oscillator. So each individual oscillator will get its own key tracking, and it's one of the reasons why it sounds like Monarch, like it sounds so good as a modeled synth. Moving on, we have our spectrogram right here, or an analysis here in real time. We're We're able to change how many bands, and because this could be processing intensive as well, I recommend just leave it at its default. It's fine. I mean, you're not going to be using this for like any in-depth analysis, just a general look at the sound. So that's cool. And we have also the master panning. So once everything's been processed, we can change the panning there. And we can also change the gain. We see up here we have this velocity thing. It says velocity on it. You might be going, what is this? And intuitively, you probably think it has to do with velocity is how hard you hit the key. And you'd be right. So right now it's at 60%. If I change it to 0, no matter how hard or soft I hit the key. I also love it when synths include this feature because it can be really nice to be able to customize it like this. So depending on the DAW you're working in. At 0%, it will always play the same velocity. It does not give a living crap how hard or soft I'm hitting the key. I hit it really soft. It's the same. Now, if I go to -%, -100, if I hit the key softly or slowly, not very fast, you would think it would be soft. But in this case, it'd actually be very loud. So that's very soft. If I hit it really hard, that's very soft. It's going, oh, he must want it soft. If I go the other way, that makes a lot more sense. So if I hit it hard, it's loud. If I hit it soft or slowly, then it's soft. So it's hit 60 by default if you double click it. It's like, oh, that's interesting. You also notice that your master envelope is E5. I believe that they don't change that. Would you like to start a new patch? Yes. I don't know why I had to think about that. So as you see, it's still E5. So what does this mean? Well, if you go to your modulation tab, the envelope that controls the master shape of your sound is the 5th envelope. I'm not going to pull it out. But in Massive, they're the same way. I'm just like, they don't pick the first ones. I think it's because they just want you to be able to grab the first one and use it for the first thing you're thinking of, while the last one, you're a lot less likely to grab. So maybe it's a little less convenient to get to. So these are like more intuitive for being creative. Most of the time, it's going to be the standard. This is going to be what you want for your envelope anyways. We'll talk about envelopes more in a future video. If you have any questions about this, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day.